So we've been recording a series of interviews and recorded interviews with some of the key portfolio managers from some of the fund strategies on our coverage list. And we're delighted today to be joined by Xuesong Zhao from Polar Capital. Xuesong, thanks very much for joining us today. Thanks for your time. Xuesong is the lead portfolio manager of the Polar Capital Automation and Artificial Intelligence Fund, or AI Fund. And he's also a fund manager on the Polar Capital technology team. They run the flagship technology trust and global technology fund. So we initiated coverage on the automation and AI funds back in early 2018, quite shortly after the fund launched. And we were attracted to some of the strategy's quite differentiating features. So this is a technology strategy at its heart, but one that also addresses the fact that the very definition of what a technology company is becoming ever more blurred. The focus is very much on companies that are embracing new technologies for their own competitive advantage and to drive better profitability, but also the team look to leverage their experience within the technology sector to look at a range of other large and often misunderstood markets where technology can really change the addressable market. The team often simplify the strategy into kind of four broad themes, and that being industrial automation, really where the term the Internet of Things is really the ever more connectedness of devices is kind of driving progress. Robotics, where you've got advanced components like sensors, which are really broadening demand. Artificial intelligence, which is perhaps one of the more profound areas of technological progress recently, and that's being unlocked by kind of cheaper computing costs and increasing data capture, and material science, which is really a kind of enabler for the other three themes, really. So Xuesong, I thought it might be interesting to go through each of those four areas and just maybe pick out one kind of key factor or key catalyst that's really driving things at the moment. So if we perhaps started with industrial automation, and I thought maybe 5G connectivity is kind of an upcoming trend that really has the potential to really change things in an industrial setting. I wondered if you could talk us through what you see as the impact from that.
Yes, we'll start with the 5G, the impact. I think one of the unique features of a 5G network is the extremely low latency. And this enables a completely new set of applications. And there are several ways to play that. But the most important one is industrial IoT, in my view, will accelerate adoption quite significantly. The reason, the hurdle for existing manufacturers to utilize this new technology at the moment is the implementation cost, because they have to create a wired environment so that the latency was extremely low, and only very large corporate can afford doing so. And 5G network will bring this to pretty much everyone. And that actually enable the real-time movement of those robots. Because 5G network now solve the latency problem. So that's the reason why you see lots of the vendors, especially manufacturers, they are doing the pilot testing on these robots. So that's the most exciting areas in the automation side. And that's the reason we think the industrial IoT will significantly pick up from here. And that's the first thing on the manufacturing side. The secondly is more about the predictive maintenance. And once you connect the machine together, those operating system can start collecting data from machines, and then they can apply analytics. By using those data, they can generate meaningful information from this, and that's going to solve the biggest problem for manufacturing industry, which is unplanned downtime. And this is very costly. So we think the 5G will enable the connected machines, and those two areas will see a significant pickup in the first wave.
So maybe let's move on to robotics then. We could probably touch on a vast number of areas here. Robotics is changing a lot of things in healthcare and logistics, for example. But I thought we could maybe pick up on the transportation sector. And clearly, perhaps the end game here is autonomous vehicles, or the greater rollout of autonomous vehicles. But from an investment point of view, where do you see us in the journey to really disrupting the transport sector?
Sure. The first one, I think, our view basically is before 2025 or 2026, it's going to be very difficult for us to see the full autonomous driving on the public road. Due to technology barrier, but more important is regulation. I can share you with a quick example, which is for level 3 technology, and it was supposed to be in the market by this year, but it was delayed 2 years. It's because the regulator and the insurance company, they refused to sign off the liability. So that caused a massive delay of implementing level 3. But obviously the problem now solved, you probably will see more level 3 cars. So I think regulatory and other industries' attitude towards autonomous driving vehicle and also create a barrier as well. So what we see in the market at the moment, firstly, is in a controlled environment. You see lots of use case of the autonomous vehicles, for example, like warehouse, like in the mining industry, or maybe in the scientific parks. You actually see those fully autonomous driving vehicles running around, and they collect enough data. But in order for the full deployment to happen, and the regulation has to change and to incorporate the significant impact that autonomous vehicle can bring to our lives. I think that could be the biggest barriers rather than technology. At the same time, the LiDAR related technology is mature and they actually can produce a good result. But the issue is the OEMs want to achieve 99.99999 accuracy, and it will take some time for them to improve the technology as well. So we think in near term, probably you won't see the full autonomous driving vehicle on the road. And based on current pipeline, I think around 2026, you should see the first wave adoption.
Let's spend some time on artificial intelligence now. So we often see examples of kind of progress being made here in terms of AI's or technological grasp of kind of the gaming industry. So we saw the Chinese board game Go essentially being cracked by AlphaGo and chess, and I understand poker's been addressed more recently. But what should we be keeping an eye on from an investment point of view in this area of technology?
At the moment, image recognition and natural language processing are two biggest applications at the moment, and technology leaders are working on those. Last year, Microsoft actually introduced a model with 17 billion parameters and try to use the model to understand what we are talking about, what we are writing. And this model has successfully surpassed the human's level to understand the natural languages. And that is basically some significant improvement. And we think the natural language related application will begin to be adopted by enterprise. For example, conversational AI, and on the customer services point of view, and you can introduce the AI to actually help the customer to solve them problem. So we will pay attention to this. At the same time, is the image recognition. This is relatively mature industry application, I would say, but they require some specific data. And the areas we are looking at is more like analytic instrument. They try to help human and to recognize the patterns by using the AI algorithms. And in the medical equipment industry, they incorporate some of the AI algorithm in the machine as well. So I would say language processing related and image recognition related areas we are focusing on at the moment.
And maybe at this point, could we touch on just the evolution, or as you see the evolution of the strategy? Because as I understand it, at the moment, the exposure is within the fund is largely to some of the areas outside of AI, but you would very much see it as it evolving into being a much more bigger part of things in the future. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. At the moment, we look at the technology enabling companies, and they actually see the quite benefit from the significant investment. But from beginning of this year, you see the normal company, Fortune 500, outside tech sector, started embracing this AI technology. At the moment, obviously, they are trying to figure out how they can use this. But there's no doubt you will see the full embrace of this new technology. And the at the moment, what we see is more on the image-related areas. As I mentioned there, you see the medical equipment related, and also any data-rich sector also start using it. For example, some oil gas related company, they start using the data to do analytics for those machines. And that created new opportunities which didn't exist before.
So the final area is material science. And as I mentioned before, kind of advancements here are really a kind of enabler to the other three themes that you've just discussed. But could you maybe talk us through how you gain exposure to this area within the fund?
Sure. For this material science, I think there's three areas to pay attention. The first one, obviously, lightweight materials. We think this play a very important role for those EV, because the energy density of the battery is really, really low. So the introduction of the lightweight materials will help the OEM to reduce the car's weight. So that's definitely an area focusing on. The second one is so-called high-end materials, which can be used in different applications. For example, the first one is the 5G related, as I mentioned. In order to achieve the ultra-low latency, you need to use a very special glass fiber, and the material companies plays a very important role. And also, we briefly touch on the autonomous driving vehicle related opportunities. And one of the issues is the LiDAR, obviously, is quite important for the autonomous driving vehicle, but the normal black paint will absorb 95% of the reflection. So only 5% of the light will be reflected. And that's the reason why the normal paint doesn't work. So you need to have a very special coating on the car so that LiDAR can actually see the signal reflected by those special paintings. So that creates a very big opportunity for some of the coating companies as well. So that's opportunities we are looking at for material science segment.
Xuesong, thanks very much for that. That's been really interesting to run through those four key themes. For those listening, if you'd like any more information on Polar Capital's automation and artificial intelligence funds, you can contact your investment manager for a copy of our recent research notes. But just lastly, Xuesong, thanks very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for your support.